Good evening and a warm welcome to the Rushcliffe Borough Council's Standards Committee meeting. I would like to remind everyone that meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the Council's YouTube channel. In addition, other people may film, record, post on social media, or blog from this meeting. The use of any such images or sound recording is not under the Council's control. May I remind councillors to please switch your microphone off when you are not speaking. Today, we are supported by officers, Sarah Pregnant, Monitoring Officer, Rachel Clark, Deputy Monitoring Officer, and Tracy Coop, Democratic Service Officer. Also, we have Chris Richards, one of Council's independent person, and Kerry White, one of the cooperative members. I would now like to move to the first item on the agenda. Apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we have apologies from Councillor Brown and Councillor Della to Councillor Sims this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations? Thank you. Item 3, minutes of the meeting held on 5th of Feb 2025. As none of the voting members of the committee were present at the last committee meeting on 5th of Feb 2025, I propose that monitoring officer have authority to approve the minutes. All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and I can confirm that the minutes are approved.
Can I ask if, was there an action or something on some benchmarking of presumably numbers? Has that happened?
Yes, that's correct. There was an action as a result of the last meeting, and that was actioned at the time, so that was shared with committee members at that time.
Okay, item 4, cases and work updates. So I'll hand over to monitoring officer to introduce the report and take any questions. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. So this is my annual report to the Standards Committee to update you of Code of Conduct complaints in respect of councillors that we've received since the last report, and also to provide updates in respect of other pieces of work that might be relevant to this committee. The report covers formal complaints received for breach of the councillors' Code of Conduct, reported since the last committee meeting on the 5th of February 2025 until the 31st of March of this year. Appendix 1 details the complaints received during that reporting period at Table B. You'll see that during that time period, we have received a total of 20 complaints that have progressed under that process. The complaints have been against both borough and parish councillors and have been made by fellow councillors as well as members of the public. 2 complaints were referred for formal investigation, and at the time of writing the report, we were awaiting receipt of the final report from the external investigators. Table A details the outcome of 2 complaints that were reported in the last committee, where at that time the matters had not concluded and the outcome was unknown. I can confirm that all complaints have been considered in consultation with the council's independent persons and in line with the council's arrangements for dealing with Code of Conduct complaints. Chris Richards, one of our independent persons, is present today, and I would like to pass on my thanks to him and also Helen Richardson for their support in administrating the complaints process and their timely and thorough responses that they provide us with. Thank you. I'd also like to extend my thanks to Rachel Clark, Deputy Monitoring Officer, who has considered and progressed the majority of the complaints that have been reported to you today. She dealt with these in my absence over the last year and stepped up in the most exceptional circumstances with very little notice during times of many work pressures, not least because of LGR. In terms of training, Standards Committee received training on committee procedures and the panel hearing process back on the 18th of March of this year, and that invite to that training was extended to all councillors. I delivered further training on the 15th of April for those members who are unable to attend the evening session, so every councillor on this committee has received the required training. In terms of the councillor code of conduct, you'll see that I am not recommending any changes to the councillor code of conduct at this time. The code is still consistent with the model code of conduct published by the Local Government Association. Members might recall that government consulted on changes to the standard regime back in early 2025 and announced in November 25 that they would be introducing a raft of reforms to the standard regime to hopefully strengthen that. This includes strengthened sanctions available to local authorities by introducing new powers to suspend councillors for serious misconduct for periods up to 6 months, withholding allowances, the introduction of a mandatory code of conduct that will apply at all tiers of government, local government, and also a national appeals framework. These changes require legislative change and as of yet have not been introduced. I am, however, proposing changes to the Council's approved arrangements for dealing with the Code of Conduct complaints, and this is to ensure consistency with the Local Government Association guidance. I've set out the changes at Appendix 2 with the proposed changes in red for ease. The proposed changes include some minor amendments, but also, and the most significant one, is removal of the right to refer complaints to the full committee, and this would be where the full committee would be asked to determine whether a breach has taken place or not. The reason for this recommendation is to ensure consistency with the LGA guidance, and also because it simply isn't needed. As part of our panel process, we do not specify the number of members to sit on a panel hearing. It is a minimum of 3. And we would decide how many members need to be present dependent on the nature of the allegation, and to ensure political balance as well. So we still have the availability to deal with a panel hearing with full membership of the committee present. Standards committee sitting as the committee should be dealing with reports such of this nature, and actually hearing the and determining whether a breach has taken place is a role for the panel hearing itself. And finally, following the recent training session for Standards Committee, this highlighted a gap in our written procedures. We didn't have a protocol for panel hearings, and I suspect the reason being because we haven't actually had one since 2019. However, because that gap was identified, following that training session, I've developed a draft procedure, which you'll see at Appendix 3 of your papers. And this protocol would supplement the written arrangements that we already have in place. And I have drafted that, taken on board some of the comments that were made by members at that training session. It's recommended that you note the contents of this report and that you approve the changes to the arrangements at Appendix 2 and also adoption of the panel hearing protocol at Appendix 3. I'm happy to take any questions, Chair, if anybody has any before the recommendations are debated.
Do we have any questions, please?
Thank you, Chair. We wouldn't even have enough members tonight for a panel meeting, would we? We are a bit short. But my question is on the main report, and it's on the finances. It says it was 10,000. It cost £10,000 to address the concerns that were raised between February and now. Is that a normal amount, or is it, how does it vary from before? Have we had more complaints and it's costing us more, etc.? Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's a fair comment. In terms of looking backwards, last year there was no external spend on councillor complaints. None. We've had to expend money on this occasion because there are 2 matters that have gone for investigation, and they have been allocated to external investigators, so we've had to pay fees for that. There are also, I believe, 2 matters where the initial assessment was outsourced to external advisors as well. The reason being was because of capacity at that time.
Do we have any more questions yet?
Thank you, Chair. Just very briefly, as Councillor Pont said, I think it's eminently sensible to move the full panel thing, because I don't think we've had a meeting where the full panel's actually even been here. But just out of interest, you said that there's minimum of 3, and I'm assuming that that's your prerogative as to how many sit on that. What is there a criteria, have I missed it in here, as to how many you would appoint and for what reasons you would change the numbers? Thank you.
So there isn't a written criteria, and the reason being is to try and not be too prescriptive. And as I said, what I have tried to do is to make sure that this is in accordance with the guidance that we get from the Local Government Association. In terms of that decision that would be taken, though, what would be taken into consideration is political proportionality. Whether there would be any conflicts of interest, for example. So we wouldn't want to invite the whole committee if, for example, some members might be conflicted. And also just the overriding principle of fairness. And that decision would be taken by myself, but that would be in consultation with the chair of this committee and also by consulting the independent persons as well.
Ms. Carey, please. Yeah.
Thank you. So I was just looking through the cases, and there seemed to be a number of complaints where people weren't actually acting in the capacity of being a councillor, and I wonder if it might be worth sort of amending the form, the reporting form, just to beef up the fact that you can only complain. You know, please make sure the person is acting in their capacity as a councillor and conducting council duties, because we can only deal with matters of those types. It just seems that we've sort of started to get a bit of a creep of complaints about people's private lives and not people's public lives.
I think that's a good recommendation. The only thing that I would perhaps say that needs to be noted is complaints don't always come through the form, unfortunately, even though we do direct complainants in that way. It's not unusual for me to receive an email directly or an email to the monitoring officer inbox that we have at the council, unfortunately. And I think the other thing to note as well, in terms of that sort of creeping up and perhaps has not seen that before, is just sometimes it's such a grey area, particularly now with social media is the area where you see it can be a fine line between as a councillor acting in their official capacity, or actually it's just them as part of their private life and using social media in that way. So that might also account for the reason why we've sort of seen that increase. But I think that's a really good suggestion, and I'll take that away. Thank you.
Do we have any more questions? Okay. So I propose for the recommendation. Can I have a seconder, please? Yeah. So all in favor for the recommendation? Thank you. Okay, so we'll go to the next item, which is mandatory training completion rates. Again, I'll pass on to monitoring officer, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this report has been brought to this committee following consideration of the Councillors' Learning and Development Policy by full council back in September 25. Members will be aware that it is a requirement of that policy for councillors to undertake the mandatory training within 12 months of taking office. Completion rates are set out in paragraph 4.1 of the report for your consideration. You will see that in July of 2025, this stood at 40% for e-learning modules. I'm pleased to confirm that we now have a much improved position with the overall completion rate standard at 85%, and that is above the 80% target that we have. 73% of councillors have now completed all 6 of those e-learning courses. Since July 25, 8 face-to-face training sessions have been run, 5 of which were mandatory for the relevant committee members, with the exception of the budget training, which is mandatory for all councillors. Again, completion rates for those are set out in paragraph 4.2 of your report. I'm pleased to see that the standards committee training is at 100%, and thank you all for taking the time to attend the training that was held recently. It is important that councillors undertake the mandatory training, as the programme is designed to equip you to undertake your role as an elected member and ensure that you have the appropriate awareness and knowledge for your role, and also understanding the statutory duties of the council and security and compliance requirements. The council tries to offer training in different formats. Some are held face to face, but also we have online and e-learning training. and hopefully that is to increase attendance. We also undertake mop-up sessions or make recordings of sessions available after the event where appropriate for councillors who've been unable to attend a session. The recommendation is to note the content of the report, but also to consider any action or recommendations that you may have as a result of considering it. Again, Chair, I'd be happy to take any questions if there are any for me.
Thank you, Sarah. Do we have any questions on this item, please? Yes, okay, right.
I don't really know how the structure of councils work, but obviously the rates are fantastic and are much improved on last year. Do councillors have like a mentor or a line manager or anything like that these are promoted through?
So the comparable there to, I suppose, a line manager would be those members who are part of a group. So there are, you know, group leads and whips as part of a group, and part of their responsibility would be to encourage members within their party to undertake training. So that would probably come into play. You know, officers, particularly in democratic services, will support and encourage councillors to undertake training where it's highlighted that something might have been missed, or if councillors are having trouble accessing, for example, officers are also there available to support them to do so.
Councillor Matthews.
Thank you. Just to follow up on that, I recently took over as chair of member development, and this was a paper that was at member development, and I was very pleased to see that we tried to address that by trying to encourage and write to members, telling them what courses they still had to do. So we highlighted it to make sure that they were aware that they haven't done certain training, and tried to encourage them to take up the training. And I can't remember the exact wording, but in essence, we were sending those reminders more regularly to try and encourage that take up. But it was encouraged as well that actually our take up is far and above a lot of other councils of like comparator, and we put in place some measures to try and have some accountability, so that if people didn't do their training, then questions will be asked at a later date through their respective leads.
Thank you, Councillor Matthews. Councillor Plant.
Yes, just in agreement with what Councillor Matthews said, because I think at one time there was talk of naming and shaming, which I don't think we actually condoned or agreed with. But obviously it is important that members do take up the training. There's no doubt about that, and without a doubt the percentage have much improved from obviously what was put in place, so that's good. On the sort of paragraph 4.3, other mandatory face-to-face training sessions listed below, I wasn't aware that those were all mandatory on paragraph 4.3. And I know, and also, is it still, because it has been in the past the policy to run the training sessions twice in some way. And I know for a fact that the one I really wanted to go on, I was actually on holiday at the time, so I couldn't, was understanding the role of the officer and getting the best out of relationship with officers. And that was only put on once. And I have mentioned that at another meeting, I can't remember which one it was, to say that I think that is a pretty crucial training session. And certainly that needs to be put on for people who couldn't make it at that time. But yes, I certainly wasn't. I think I have been on most of them. Probably not GDP. I'm sure I had the most interesting one. But I wasn't aware that those also were mandatory.
Thank you, Councillor Plant.
I was just going to say, in terms of the first 5 of those, they would have been run as part of the member induction programme after. And my understanding is that the majority of them were run more than once, but I agree not all of them have been. And certainly the more recent one, which you've highlighted, was held in January 25, and it hasn't been held again since. So that's certainly something I can take back and ask for us to hold an additional course of that one.
Back on that, and I think again, when were we elected? 23?
Yeah.
Yes, wasn't it? really that's a crucial one, because, you know, in terms, especially if you're a new member, in terms of how the relationship between councillor and officer, well, we can look at it nationally, the relationship between civil servants and prime minister, but it really, you know, is one that I think should be run quite early in the councillor's training.
Thank you. I'll take those comments back.
Thank you, Councillor Plant. Do we have any more questions on this? Okay, yeah, please, Mrs. Gay.
So obviously your strategy with the standards committee worked really well. Is there any plans to do something similar for the other committees where specific training relates to a specific committee to incorporate it within the sort of regular cadence of meetings?
Yeah, so in terms of training when it's scheduled, would you consider when would be the most appropriate time to do that? One of the driving factors, as an example for the standards committee, was actually we've had a completely new cohort of members almost, apart from one who was previously sat on the committee. And for standards committee, you can only attend once you've actually attended the training session. So that's something that we would keep under review and make sure that we schedule so all members have the required training to enable them to attend the committee that they're on.
Thank you, Chair. Any more questions? Okay, so I propose for the recommendation. Can I have the seconder, please? Okay, so all in favor for the recommendation? Okay, thank you. That's it, I think. Yeah. So I think that's it. We have done all the agenda items, and thank you everyone for your time today. Thank you.